I'm here on the North Lawn with Norah O'Donnell, Chief White House Correspondent for CBS News, and this building behind us has been on the attack and the Obama campaign after Mitt Romney on his wealth, his offshore bank accounts, when he left Bain Capital. Is there any chance that all of this amounts to overkill, if they're hitting Romney too hard and it's going to be seen as overbearing and maybe not relevant to voters?
Well, it's the early stage of the campaign. The Obama campaign wants to define Mitt Romney early on, and they this week have been very much on the offensive. Even the president's deputy campaign manager, Stephanie Cutter, suggesting that Mitt Romney may have committed a felony.
That's what I'm saying about over the top. That's pretty strong rhetoric for July, let alone October. I mean, could that be going too far? Could it be seen as too harsh?
It's possible that it could be seen as going too far. The interesting thing is how the Romney team has responded. After letting the Obama team run these ads on television, negative ads about his record at Bain, now they're just responding. And in fact, Mitt Romney is now giving interviews to the 5 networks in order to maybe try and flush this story out of the system. It's interesting because it has put Mitt Romney on the defensive, and we know that in campaigns, you know, whenever you're setting the debate up, you're winning that week.
Aren't the media also putting Mitt Romney on the defensive? There have been a lot of stories, Washington Post, Vanity Fair, Boston Globe, about Romney's wealth, his tax returns, the Cayman accounts, and all of that. It seems to some conservatives like we are carrying a message that the Obama campaign would love us to carry.
Well, look, I think facts are an important thing, and one important point to point out is that Mitt Romney has not released his tax returns. That's not just a Democratic talking point. We've gone back and looked, and not since Ronald Reagan in 1980 did someone only release 1 year of their tax returns. So it has been the standard that both Republicans and Democratic presidential candidates release their tax returns. Why? Out of an abundance of transparency, to see what's in your tax records.
And journalists become suspicious when there's less than an abundance of transparency?
Yes, absolutely. And why not release more of your tax returns? He released 2010 that showed that he had a Swiss bank account. Now there's going to be this pressure on him to release more because of questions about what he was doing at Bain. Was he the sole owner, as he has said in SEC filings, until 2002, and how much he was getting from the company, etc.
So to some extent, the way the Romney campaign deals with the press, how the level of specificity on providing answers helps either diffuse the charges or can drive the narrative that he's not saying enough.
Look, there's one of these stories every couple of months in politics, and until you sort of let everybody, all the information out, does it finally quiet the story. I was just recalling in 2008, remember John McCain's medical records?
Yes.
Remember when he let all the doctors associated with CNN or NBC or CBS in to look at the documents, but only, I remember, was for an hour or two to sort of see those, and they didn't get access to the full documents. But you've got to sort of give some, you want to be president of the United States. You have to be, as journalists, you have to answer questions, you got to give full disclosure, and there's some questions about how much disclosure Mitt Romney has made.
The phrase that journalists love is unanswered questions. And you can't have that. Now, it's been about a year since you came over to cover the White House for CBS News. Before, I used to see you on MSNBC, maybe 12, 13 times a day.
Yeah.
Do you miss being on the air that much, or is it a relief?
Certainly sometimes I miss being on the air that much when there's a big breaking news story. But, you know, now we have the internet, you know. We have a large cable, I should say, an internet presence, right, and Twitter presence. You know, you can certainly do a lot of reporting throughout the day on Twitter and sort of break that news.
And finally, your husband, known here as Chef Jeff, for one of the several restaurants that he owns, and you and he came out with a cookbook a couple of years ago on what to cook your babies and toddlers. You have 3 kids. You just took them to the doctor this morning, you told me. When do you have time to cook?
Very rarely, very rarely. I mean, every once in a while.
And yet you wrote a cookbook.
Yes. That was all just about making baby food puree, though. That's pretty easy, you know, just boiling fruit and then pureeing it. That's easy. But, you know, I still make muffins for my kids that are in the recipe, and pancakes. The easy stuff I can certainly do, but it's definitely intimidating being married to a chef. I try not to cook for him unless it's just baked goods.
One word answer, do you give any advice to him on running his restaurants?
Absolutely not.
And he doesn't give you political or journalistic advice either?
I certainly try and ask him for advice sometimes, but no, not at all. I don't give him advice. He does a pretty good job on his own.
Norah O'Donnell, thanks very much for chatting with us here at the White House.
Oh, my pleasure.